The meeting of the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission to order on Monday, May 6th at 7 p.m. Member Alan Rowland is not able to join us because of a conflict in his schedule. There are 6 of us attending tonight. I'd like to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a motion to approve the current agenda or any modifications to the agenda?
So move.
If I could, Chairman Moxley, I'd make a recommendation that we move Article 9 to ahead of Article 7, so they don't have to sit here through that.
Okay.
It's a great idea. I'll support that.
I suspect the 3 people are here for that, so.
Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Great. Question on Article 7, is that canceled?
Yes.
Okay, so that's off.
We just put it in there because a public notice was sent out. And so we wanted to recognize anybody that may be here for that. I mean, you can tell that the room is full of people that are concerned
Yeah,
about that,
I
but
can see that.
we just want to make sure it's on.
Okay. All right, disclose any conflict of interest? Well, excuse me, let's approve the agenda first.
We just did.
Point of order,
Okay.
we did that.
Okay, all right, moving on, item 4, disclose any conflict of interest?
None.
None noted. Article 5, approve the minutes of the April 22nd meeting.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have a amendment to those minutes I'd like to make or suggestion. In Article 5, it says Director Hendrick, Manager Smith, discuss the process implementation subcommittee's findings, staffing changes, how the planning commission was run in the past. I believe that last part is probably supposed to read, and how the planning department was run in the past. Is that correct, or am I just dreaming things here?
I would say that was representative of the meeting.
Okay, all right. So I would suggest that edit, that it should say, and how the planning department was run in the past.
Any other changes?
Yeah, I was kind of struggling with that a little bit. It's probably fine, but wasn't the whole point though? Your expertise wasn't on the past. Weren't you were comparing, contrasting what your future was going to look like, correct? Did you want to capture that or not really?
We could put that in there as well.
Okay.
How it was ran in the past and how we intend on directing it in the future.
Perfect.
Now, we really have 2 separate sets of minutes. And I think
Yes.
we need to approve those separately. Even though they're on the same date, but they were 2 separate meetings. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for the 5:30 p.m. April 22nd meeting?
I make the motion with the changes just discussed about changing it to how the planning department was run in the past and will be moving forward.
Would second that motion with amendment.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next set of meeting minutes was same date, 7 p.m. Any changes on that?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved
I'll second.
and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak on items that are not on the agenda today. Does anybody have any comments? Maddie, is there anybody online? Okay. Let's move on then. We'll move to Article 9, case number 233804, applicant Thomas Kuiper. Madison.
As needed, if you guys have one in front of you too, so just let me know. Hold up. Just let me- Okay. We have Thomas and Holly is here as well. Kuiper, here for 6660 Old 28th Street. This is a now vacant parcel along the south side of Old 28th Street in our B1 Village Business District. Some of you might recognize the application. They have been here in the past because it's been over a year from approval and there's been changes to the plans. They're back here for a site plan review with you today. I'll just go over the findings in my summary of the review. So this is going to be a new office building. It's 2 stories, 1 story with a mezzanine for a local law firm. The building is 5,419 square feet total. The footprint though is 3,635 with that upper level. And then the building will have a single access drive with a parking lot behind the building. And also included on the site will be a detention pond at the back behind the parking lot, and then a dumpster enclosure at the back of the parking lot. There is a pedestrian pathway that connects to our non-motorized pathway along Old 28th Street. So that's kind of the general synopsis of the building. This application is subject to site plan review, but then also the B1 Village Design Standards set in section 8 of our ordinance. So included in your packet was that full review of all the design standards. And then there are 2 standards that are maybe not quite met, but there was a good rationale given from the committee for them to be able to forward a positive recommendation for you today. So the Village Design Review Committee does recommend approval of the design of the building. And then I'll just call out the 2 items that they were maybe looking for comment or clarification on approval from you guys. So the first standard that was maybe not quite met was that the front entrance does not technically face the road. There were comments made that they are providing the required parking in the back with landscape pathways to the side entrance. While the door is not necessarily located on the front facade, it is located on the corner at the front of the facade with an additional gable and pillars to further highlight the elements of the front facade. So it doesn't specifically meet the standard, but the committee found that the applicant provided sufficient evidence to support the entrance placement. And then the second one was that the applicant has provided high quality materials on all sides. However, the proposed design does not extend that stone veneer around the base of the building around all 4 sides. But after reviewing the site's conditions, which we can get into if needed, that there's a steep slope on the west side with a retaining wall, and all of that will be preserved. So existing natural features with the steep gradient on that westward side made the committee comfortable in recommending that it might not be necessary that that stone veneer is carried around all four sides, though all the other materials or the main lap siding is carried around. So they still recommend approval on that. Is there any questions specific to the design review, or should I carry on? Go ahead.
I thought last time we had this here, we had them do brick all the way around. That was
There-
one of the requirements last time.
There were some exceptions requested on the previous application. I think you're correct. I can't speak specifically because I didn't review it, but I do know that there was one of the requests was that they carried it around four sides. I think they just made a different case this time for approving it because it was at the base and not the whole side. But correct me if I'm wrong. Any other design standard questions, or I'll just go through the general review kind of broadly. All right, so they were subject to section 21 for site plan approval. In general, all the standards were met, you know, it's not in a floodplain. The setbacks presented were in accordance with the building setbacks. So they have 25.8 feet from the road, and it is required to be 20 feet. The height of the building measured to the midpoint of the roof is 22 feet, so the height is in compliance because it doesn't exceed the 25 feet. Off-street parking and access loading, I'm on page 4 of my staff report now. The site amenities, there are bollards in place along the pedestrian walkway that enhance the safety. There are no bike racks proposed. The applicant should add a bike rack if they would like to be in compliance with the section 19 standards. That was one of my comments. The walkway looks good. It's proposed to be connected to our non-motorized pathway, convenient access for pedestrians from both the parking lot and the street. The parking lot is required to have 17 parking spaces. The site plan indicates 16 regular parking spaces that meet the size requirements of 18 feet by 9 feet. And then there's one handicap parking space that is double as wide for a total of 17. So the number of parking spaces and the size of the parking spaces are both compliant with the standard. Getting into that parking space size at the bottom of the page, they're required to be 8.5 feet wide and they're proposing 9 feet. The maneuvering lane width is also in compliance with the standards as it requires 24 feet. The fire department has reviewed the application as well, and they didn't have any concerns with maneuvering and access. The lighting is in compliance with the standard. It's downcast, there's sconces. The photometric plan shows that they're not exceeding the foot candles. Signage, the only sign proposed in the site plan was that wall sign indicating Kuiper and Kramer, the name of the law firm. The section 6.03 of the sign ordinance applies here. And they are in compliance with those maximum square footage. The landscaping, they are required to have a buffer yard. The site plan indicates a 20-foot buffer yard around the perimeter of the parcel. More towards the southern side of the parcel is mostly preserved wooded area that meets the buffer standards. And then closer around the building, you can see the landscaping schedule where they are meeting the number of canopy trees, understory trees and shrubs required for the landscaping buffer yard. So that standard is met. Site circulation, again, they have a 24-foot wide drive, which is compliant with the standard. They already have a curb cut from the road commission because it's a building in existence. And so that standard is met. The outside storage, the proposed dumpster enclosure is the only outside storage proposed on the building, which requires a 6-foot tall with solid doors, sorry, 6-foot tall walls for the enclosure with solid doors. And they meet both of those standards with a 6-foot tall brick enclosure with a faux wood solid door that opens fully for access for loading. And that was also a standard for the design review committee. And then finally, drainage included in your packet was Eric Thorne, our township engineer's stormwater review. Per usual for site plans, there is a requirement for a stormwater maintenance agreement, which would be a condition of approval for this. And the utilities and infrastructure, there's already existing water and sewer at the site. My final recommendation then is for approval of the proposed building with the following conditions. $5,000 landscape bond is submitted prior to construction. That stormwater maintenance agreement would be submitted and registered with the county prior to construction. And then proof of permission to construct the access drive that encroaches just a teensy bit on that southern parcel. That was back to my review on the access, which the applicant can provide clarifying answers if you guys have concerns about that. That concludes my summary. Any specific questions?
Why are we having an encroachment on another property for that drive?
So we have been notified that the drive, they got the property with the drive as it is. It's likely that the road commission, when they originally did the driveway access drive, that was where it was placed. But that would be the only reason why we know about it. But other than that, it could have just been a small oversight.
Isn't this a time to clean it up?
That's why I brought it to the attention of the staff review today, just so we could address it if needed.
I'd like to see that cleaned up. The second thing
Mhm.
is going back a long way now, they call this old 28th Street, but when it was a real 28th Street that went straight, this property, this parcel was right up there along with all the other parcels on what we call Old 28th Street. Do they actually have anything in writing saying they have legal access across that property from the street to their parcel?
I have not received any specific document, but I would refer to the applicant to answer that question if they're
Otherwise,
able.
it's landlocked without some legal description saying they have the right to
Right,
use
through that
drive.
right of way parcel.
So I guess I'd like to see that.
Okay,
Member Richardson.
Oh, and if we're still talking about site circulation, section G.
Mhm.
Down at the bottom, just a clarification, it's 6690. The neighboring daycare. Rather than 6990.
oh, the address is, sorry. It should be 6690.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that typo.
Good eye. Other questions? Member Reese?
I don't remember the last time we talked about this in 2022 real clearly, but I know when JT's came in a number of years ago, there was a pretty heated discussion about, in fact, there was a split vote up here about holding off on their approval because the DDA had a desire for a pathway from the library down towards Tassel Park that would run across the back of the south side of all these properties. Has there been any, so part of that approval, we had to have them agree to work out something with the township in the future if they ever decided to build a path. Has there been any discussion at all about that with this parcel? Because I would think it would be needed to connect all the dots.
Yeah, no, it will have not been brought to my attention, so I was not aware of it.
Okay.
So you think there was an easement for the
Well,
other properties?
that was the problem, is that somebody from township staff or the DDA came in during the meeting and basically said, we want a 10-foot easement across the back of this property. And so they're trying to hold up the approval, which I did not support that method of
Yeah,
acquiring that. So basically, we just asked the applicant as part of the approval to make a good faith effort to work with somebody in the future if that,
mhm.
the applicant didn't seem to have an issue with it, but it would basically come from the library across the back of those properties. So just
Okay.
want to throw that out there that, hey, in the future, we'd really appreciate some effort to work with us on that if,
And
Yeah.
ironically, it looks like there's a
It
fair amount
happens.
of a strip of land behind the retention pond, right? There's-
Yeah.
right, I mean, it's
Yeah,
not,
looks like
it's,
it probably wouldn't,
I don't think it poses a great hardship for,
so maybe that's something
Right.
to.
but
Member Bruno.
apparently it's not an issue because nobody brought it up, so.
Member Bruno.
Well, I'm gonna go kind of in the same direction on two things. So we're looking at the back end, now back to the front end. So you'd mentioned maybe the Kent County had it there, but the Kent County will only do the curb cut, not the actual drive.
Correct.
So the curb cut isn't onto the neighboring parcel, the daycare
It's-
center, it's the drive itself.
Let me look at that.
Because the curb cut is in the old 28th or 28th Street right away. It's the drive itself.
Yeah.
So
I just don't
and I just
know.
drove it this afternoon and it obviously would need to be replaced, so I
Yeah.
don't see that as much of an
Well,
issue
and their
with it.
plan is to repave the drive.
Right, so back to
Um,
Timmy, then I wonder why we wouldn't just move it over and alleviate that.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of, this is a funny parcel, right? Like to your point, there's another parcel between the road and 6660 Old 28th Street. So I don't know the history of, was there one curb cut closer at one time? So that's why it was there. And then when it was extended, another
Okay.
entrance drive was given. So we could get clarification from the road commission, but I know the applicant is also willing to discuss it.
Okay, and then kind of the follow on or works right with that thread. If you look at page 41 and 54 of our packet, this parcel we're talking about, if I interrogate it using the Regis parcel finder, it comes back kind of null. It doesn't quantify it, but I think it's because it's a 28th Street right of way.
That's correct.
So
That
that
is
would
right of
be,
way.
it's a right of way. So
Mhm.
that would be the Kent County Road Commission, correct?
Right, that is the right of way for 28th Street.
28th Street, okay. So that leads me, so one,
I'm not
If they
entirely sure what
authorize-
you're
if
looking at, sorry, because I don't have the packet. So
if they authorize the curb cut, inherently, they know it's going across their property. So it's kind of like the one supersedes the other.
Well, right, it's essentially, as Timmy pointed out, it used to be the road.
Okay.
So when they moved the road away, they had to create a curb cut to allow access to the property still.
Correct, correct. But now the
They
next
chose to
question
put it
is-
on an angle and a curve in front of the other property because it has to be so far from the intersection.
So the next question is long lead into it, but there's been talk about old 28th Street becoming new 28th Street or something, right? There's been talk about it maybe becoming a one-way or, this
Closing it up.
pathway or
Mhm.
closing it off. How does that work with this? We're in the middle of a master plan. Has there been conversations about that? This looks well thought out, well engineered. There's lots of documentation here, but are we missing kind of the 60,000 foot view of how does this integrate with things around it?
yeah, it's a good question. It was brought up at the Village Design Review Committee. Grace kind of mentioned, some changes that could be coming to that area specifically. I think this area already has the village business design standards set on it, which nowhere else in the village area, or sorry, township has. So there already is like 17 or 18 additional design standards on the building. So if anything, it's a good example of how we would want this area to be developed in the future. I don't know if Andrew has any other specific comments to that.
I guess that's not my concern is kind of the opposite. So it seems like you say, this is I would call it the bleeding edge. They're doing a lot of stuff that we haven't previously asked.
Mhm.
And I don't then want to shoot them in the foot with them come back in a year from now, say we're gonna make this a one-way. And they said, well, why didn't we know that, right? If they're doing all this to the betterment of the community, let's make sure we set them up for success.
Yeah,
And
and
if we're
Thomas might be
contemplating
able to
making it a
speak to
one-way-
it too, because he was at the meeting where I don't know if you recall, we kind of talked about there
Let me
might be
speak
some
to this real
changes to
quick.
the village.
I can speak to this. So
Okay.
right now, the DDA has funded OHM to do a whole design review for the village.
Okay.
We had a stakeholders meeting, I think it was 2 days after our planning commission, it seems like it was the 25th, a couple weeks ago, to discuss potential designs. There was a lot of feedback, and OHM took all that information back, and they're going to start doing those design concepts. Everything is conceptual right now, but there was a discussion about potentially making it one way, potentially closing off the area and making a public space where Cascade and Old 28th meet. I guess for you guys, I'll do it this way. This is 28th and Cascade. Everything's conceptual. So within the next month or so, we should see those design plans come back through, and we'll make sure that the planning commission is aware of them, and we either present them here or we'll let you know the meetings that they're coming to. Right now, everything's just conceptual.
So how do we look out for the best interest of all parties, including the applicant? How do we not approve something that a month from now we
Could change.
paint him into, I don't want to paint him into a corner.
Well, all of the residents there will be stakeholders in that decision. So that's not something that the city would just up and do without having a very, robust conversation with the business owners on Old 28th Street to figure out what the best thing for their business would be. So that's not gonna nobody's gonna just do that without feedback from that road.
Anything else, Madison? Yes, Chris.
Thank you. I noticed that you had a $5,000 landscape bond. How did you come up with that amount?
That's the standard amount that we've typically applied for site plans.
Okay, I think
Do you have a recommendation?
inflation, well, we've got a guy next to me who does that. I just know that I quoted a few small things in my home that were more than $5,000. So I wonder if with the updated times and pricing, that should be higher. That's all. What would, a landscape, it'd be probably add another zero, right?
Well, for a bond, I don't know that we need to go that high.
Yeah.
Because probably more so correcting an issue, not
Sure.
so much re-landscaping the whole site, but yeah, I could see that being a little on the skinny side, maybe.
And perhaps it wasn't when we started doing it. I'm not,
Yeah,
questioning that. And then you had mentioned the bike rack, but I didn't see that in your staff recommendation. Is that something that the
Good
DDA
catch.
feels strongly about?
it could,
Is that something you'd like to see us put as part of our approval?
I would recommend it, yes. It was in the standards of
That's why I
the
asked.
ordinance.
Okay, those are my two questions, Mr. Chair.
Other questions?
Can I ask one more? I think it's directed mainly at Scott. This is our open discussion. So you're on the architecture review committee, and it sounds like a lot of deliberation went into
I
this.
think Mr. Allen is.
I used to be, I was removed and Mr. Allen came on. I was at the review of this at the first meeting that happened in December.
Okay.
But I wasn't around for the latest revision.
I was.
But you were, okay, so I guess my question is, I think it's great that we don't even, the ink isn't even dry on the new master plan. And we're already seeing implementations of it. So I don't want to look the gift horse in the mouth. But on the other hand, our first one out of the gate has one glaring probably change. I don't think the stone on the slope side is a big deal, but
Timmy does.
not facing the street is a big deal. Now, how do we address that with the next applicant? You know what I mean?
But even with the setback, not to, sorry, I don't know if this is open conversation, Mr. Chair, but I mean, that it's a unique setback. I can appreciate it for almost every other building on Old 28th Street. But
Except for this one?
I only say it because it's like, it feels like it's almost removed.
I kind of agree, but then I question like, so why is it an item in our architectural standard?
I concur with that, and I wonder if the standard should be such that if it's a certain distance from the road, that it doesn't need to be that, but
I like that. That's what I'm kind of thinking, because I agree, like, to make him turn this just silly, then I think, well, why is it in there?
especially because the way he's lining up his parking lot. like,
His parking is way in the back.
Yeah.
The building is approximately 175 feet from the edge of the street. So, and you've got quite a bit of green between,
Yep.
the municipal sidewalk and the building. So I think if there's anywhere where this fits well, it's there.
I would,
It doesn't, everybody that goes to that building is gonna be parking in the back. And then, you have a grand entrance on the front.
what you never see, yeah.
It's kind of like the airport. I'm guessing most of their clients are probably not coming on a bicycle.
Member Bruno, if it helps, believe the intent of that design standard is that if you're on a main street, you would want all of the entrances to be along the front, right? You wouldn't want to have to go, oh, I have to go to the back to get into this one, but I have to go the front, like it's to create a design standard that feels walkable and people oriented, if that helps.
I think what they're proposing is a good, meets in the middle, so to speak.
No, I
Good
agree.
compromise.
I'm raising it not to have the applicant change. I'm raising it more of the philosophical of, if our first applicant out of the gate needs a change, maybe we're overstepping on the architectural side.
And these are good notes for us to put in as we amend our ordinance too. I'll make a note of
I think
the
we can defend
conversation.
this one though.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
absolutely,
mean,
I agree. That's-
look down Old 28th
I'm
Street.
not
is
doing the
there-
job articulating, I don't have an issue with this, but.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But there's no other spot with this unique nature on that street where they're 175 feet from the road.
I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and give us a little background. Mr. Kuiper?
Good evening. My name is Justin Longstreth with Moore and Brugink Engineers. I have Holly here with me as well as Thomas applicants here. I'm going to try my best to answer or maybe just give a couple of brief bullet points on some of the items that have been discussed.
Sure.
If there's any questions that I can't answer, I may turn it over to them. But first one, real easy one, adding bike racks to the site, that's not an issue at all. Certainly can do that. As far as the driveway is concerned, just maybe want to point out a couple of things. The first, I'm going to flip to the existing survey plan just for reference of what's out there today. This is the site in its existing condition. And you can see the existing parking lot. You can see where the old original building sat. But what I want to point out is the existing driveway currently extends off property. I know that we've kind of talked about that already, but it is an existing condition that we are not changing. Now, when I flip to the site plan, one thing I want to point out, and there was a comment made, I think I want to clarify, and I don't remember if it was Mattis or not, but we are not replacing the pavement for the entire driveway. We are actually only saw cutting it right on our property line and not extending streetward of our property line. So right now, the 28th Street right of way is kind of our north boundary. Everything north of that is actual road right of way. So I know one of the commissioners had asked for proof that we have access to. We certainly can do that. And I think it's just maybe a question of the road commission. But there are no parcels in between us and the road right of way that would prohibit us from accessing the site. It is actual right of way. And so for that purpose, and we were very purposeful in our delineation of where we cut that driveway, keeping it all on site so that existing road commission work is left alone and that driveway stays the same. We're just modifying it as it enters the property.
Is that driveway in pretty good shape?
I would say so. I think when you get back into the parking lot itself, it is a little rough and needs to be replaced, but obviously we're doing that. As you go out into the street, it's in pretty good condition,
Okay.
so. So I guess open it up maybe to the planning commission to discuss, what sort of documentation or what you would like us to do, but I guess wanted to point out more than anything that it is an existing condition that we're not changing. But if it's approaching the neighbor or easement, whatever, I just want to maybe have some dialogue on that.
Questions from the commissioners?
How much of that driveway is on the neighbor's lot?
My guess is it's 2 feet, 3 feet.
And you refuse to change it?
So the issue, not saying that we're going to refuse to change it, but the issue with that 2 or 3 feet is in order to make the connection work, it's not, we would be offset by 2 feet and then it would require us to go some distance, quite a bit distance into the road right away and remove and replace the entire driveway. So it's a pretty big expense and I'm certainly not saying that we refuse to do it. Just we're trying to avoid that for a couple of different reasons.
I could flip back, but I'm guessing you have the knowledge and you've got the print there. So I believe that the drive was in excess of the minimum requirements, the width wise currently, is that right? It's extra wide compared to the minimum requirement?
I don't know the answer to that. I do know that our new driveway here is 24 feet wide.
Okay.
And we are pretty close to the same
Okay,
on the existing. So if it is in excess, it's probably not much more than a foot or so. But I don't have that dimension handy.
okay.
It's going to be pretty close.
I thought Maddie had made a comment in the write-up.
Yeah, the maneuvering lane width for two-way is 22 feet minimum, and they have indicated 24 feet.
So if it's just 2 feet, would you, I get not wanting to repave the Kent County Road, that's not a good use of your money. Could you do a bump out? Like, could you just trim that from the 24 to the 22 there and keep it off the neighbor's property? Like a speed, you know what I'm talking about? Like bump outs usually slow down traffic. Could that be
I think
Yeah,
it's
work
an
very well.
option. I think our preference would maybe be to approach the neighbor and ask for an easement, just so that it is a consistent width. And we don't have kind of the jog in it. So if that is an option that's acceptable to the planning commission, I think that would be our preference first.
I'm just gonna say,
Member
as a,
Reese?
as a snowplower, I don't like that idea at all.
Bump out is not fun.
Because you've got a 24-foot wide drive and then
All
you're
of a
gonna have
sudden,
this little island come out for 2 feet and then what, 6 feet later, you're back to 24 foot. It just,
okay?
I don't think anything's ever gonna grow in that spot. I'm just throwing it
Member
out there.
Nordhook?
I'm just, this is the time to clean it up. I'm not gonna approve anything with an encroachment. Just giving you an idea of what's going on.
Is that in a condition of approval that can be made and we follow up with staff and show proof of that?
I guess I would less harshly, I guess, agree with him. We've just found a lot of issues and we've been just trying to clean stuff up. I love your idea of approaching the neighbor and just finding out if you're gonna have an easement, and I think then everybody's satisfied, and everyone wins. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I think it already has pavement on it, so we'll just start with the approaching the neighbor.
Chris?
The landscape bond, are you all right with a larger landscape bond?
Yeah, I too have gone through some landscaping
Yes.
projects at home and understand your comments, so.
I think it's a beautiful building. I know that the trustee at the end has some concerns about the brick. Could you speak to why that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not, I know that I was here for the first go around, several, the prior approval. That building was significantly taller and had a brick structure all the way around except for that wall side on the west side. And I understand the planning commission's desire to have it be brick on all four sides. This structure, and it's a picture of what it is. And these pictures might not be the best, if you could focus in on this image right here. These images show this siding all the way around the building itself, but what we're asking for on the modification to not go on the west side is this tiny section, this lower piece below this little.
It's a wainscot.
Yeah,
It's maybe a 3 or a 3 foot
that's
tall.
all we're asking is to not go on the west side of the building. Is just that little tiny section of stone.
That strip.
Yeah,
And there is a hillside on that west side.
yes,
There
that's
is.
the only change that we're
And
asking.
really, there's nobody walking
Right.
in that area.
It's retention pond.
It's actually like a really steep,
Right, on the other side of it is the library's retention pond.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody's gonna be walking there.
yeah.
You might be swimming there, but that's fine.
So I think in the
Maybe.
grand scheme of things, it does kind of change the dynamic of the request from our prior building to this building on. And when you see it kind of looking at this building and the kind of de minimis nature of the brick that we're not putting up.
At the Village Design Review Committee, this was an issue about the west side, whether or not it should have that brick wainscot. It's really stone wainscot is what it is. And we talked about it back and forth, and in the end, we agreed unanimously to leave it as is, with the siding going all the way down.
Yes.
I think at least, I think my role here is to make sure I'm looking out for the community. And I'm not sure that requiring that on the side that no one's gonna see is a good use of representing the community. But if we were to waive that, maybe perhaps the commissioner to the right, if you were to provide an easement on the very back behind the pond for a future bike path.
You know, I was looking at that a minute ago and the township owns the land behind them, so that's not necessary. Not necessary.
I'm just trying to find a common ground.
I didn't realize we owned that far
Brick for bikes.
east, but we do. So,
Brick for bikes, there you go. I mean, they're gonna have a bike rack, they might as well have a bike path, so somebody can get there and park their bike.
Other questions for the representatives?
Beautiful building.
Can I ask one naive one? I was not here 2 years ago. What happened in the pandemic or why the 2-year gap?
We initially built or had designs for what we thought would add additional tenants and really kind of expanding the law firm in a manner that had just a building that had, I think, too many zeros behind it for our liking.
Okay.
And we fell in love with something and now we like this one and it's a little bit more comfortable for us to build and manage the growth of the firm.
That's fair.
Mr. Kuiper, you've been awfully quiet. I'd like to hear some from you. The fact you live in Cascade.
I do, we all do, actually.
Great.
All three of us, we're excited to be part of this community. I've been a lawyer in Grand Rapids since 1992, I've been downtown since 1992. And after 32 years, we're excited to work in the community in which all three of us live. 5 kids so far, graduated from Forest Central, 1 more at Forest Central. He's got a number of stepchildren who have graduated from Forest Central, nephews that run Forest Central. Our other partner who's not here, Scott Kramer, has 2 kids. He lives in Tamron in the Forest Hills District. So this is our community. And while on the one hand, it's kind of sad to leave downtown, we're ready. We're excited to be out here. We're excited to be part of what we hope is going to be a catalyst on Old 28th Street and really spur positive change in that stretch. So, and to answer a question that came up before, I was at the Village Design Review Committee with Chairman. We did talk about the possibility that Old 28th Street would be cul-de-sac, fully informed of that, supported. I think it's wonderful. I think it's an exciting time to be at the forefront of the changes that we're explaining us. No concerns there whatsoever.
I like being the first to make the change.
Nice.
Well, you're going to save yourself a lot of drive time once this is done. By the way, I was the architect on Forest Hills Central High School back
Yeah.
1984.
Well, I probably laid some block because I built the dugouts at what's now the freshman baseball field. So I poured concrete for 10 years for my dad and uncle, and we did all the work out there and built those dugouts. So we probably ran across each other.
Probably. Other questions for the owner representatives?
Good, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Marisi.
Just a question for staff. So process here, there's a site plan review approval. Does this need a public hearing? No? Okay.
Other questions?
Just gonna respond to Timmy's comment that we did include it as a condition that they clarify that access as a condition of approval.
Thank you.
So I'm just trying to clarify, so we're back to a little bit, so. I guess I can't get this just, Cascade Church. See what you're saying, we do one behind it.
I think it's kind of a bum deal on the driveway thing, but I understand the desire to clarify it. Obviously, it looks like the road commission missed the mark there when they made that approach.
Off by 2 feet.
Yeah, it should just change the radius just a little bit.
Already existing.
Yeah, well, it's been there so long, it's probably, yeah.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion.
Member Nordic?
233804.
In case number 233804, I would make a motion that we approve with staff recommendations and amending the landscape bond to 20,000 and including a bike rack.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion?
And Timmy, the driveway is in the staff recommendations.
Number 3 is proof of permission to construct an access drive that encroaches on 6990 Old 28th Street Southeast.
Did I miss anything?
Nope.
You're good.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to what is number 8, Article 8.
Have a good night.
Is Leslie on the line?
Yes,
Can we ask her, Andrea, if it's okay? if we-
yeah.
Leslie, do we need to go to, or do we need to notice a, what?
Closed session
Closed
discussion.
session, or can we just go to closed session to discuss the memo that you prepared?
Yes, we need a formal vote, if you want to go to closed session to discuss the memo.
The question that Andrea brought up at the beginning of the meeting is that perhaps we need to notice it prior to the meeting that we're
Oh,
going into closed session.
no,
Requirement.
no, my apologies. No, you do not need to provide notice of it.
I'd make a motion that we
I
go
won
into
that.
closed hearing.
Support.
Support by member Bruno. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Does that-
None.
Does that need to technically be roll call vote or not to go
I
to
think
closed
we do.
session?
After all.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Oh, do I need to do the roll call?
Well, someone does.
Yes, it needs to be a roll call vote.
All right, Commissioner, Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruno, wow.
Yes.
Commissioner Rissy,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordhook,
Yes.
Chairman Moxley.
Yes,
All right,
motion passes.
passes unanimously.
Okay.
Do you know how to? Leslie's gonna jump back on too.
Make a motion.
Yes, I'm here. Yep.
Hearing
Second.
Closed session.
or out of closed session. Thank
Closed
you.
We were with
session.
you.
Second.
Okay, moved by member Nordike, supported by member Nordhook. All in favor, say
Got
aye.
a roll call.
Let's do a roll call for that. Sorry.
Come out.
Yes, let's just do a roll call to come back.
I thought it was a roll call to go in.
It is too.
Trustee Nordhook,
I didn't either.
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Bruno,
Yes.
Commissioner Rissy,
Yes.
Commissioner Nordike.
Yes.
Chairman Moxley.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay, we're back in session.
That's just lovely. Are we?
To Article 8.
I'd make a motion that we hold a public hearing to make the zoning amendment.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Okay, Article 10. Acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak. Anybody online? Nobody in the audience? Article 11, other business.
I have one.
Yes,
This is very small and I'm just throwing it out there. So our staff is, I noticed under Article 8, we don't have an applicant listed and I understand why. But in the past, we still would list the applicant and say Cascade Township.
Okay.
So I just wanted to relay
Noted.
that just to keep uniformity moving forward. I think it's fair to do that.
Noted.
any other business? I'd like to ask Leslie, is she on?
Yep.
Can you give us an update on the lawsuit by Ford Airport against Cascade Township?
Yes, so where we're at right now is the very preliminary stages. We just filed our answer last, I believe, Thursday to the complaint. So that's the first step of the process. And then we will most likely be working with the township's insurance carrier regarding coverage issues and moving forward with next steps. So I anticipate that we will be providing an update on that shortly after we receive any responsive pleadings back from the Airports Council to our answer.
What was the basic issue to start with? Was it the overlay?
Well, The complaint and the complaint is very lengthy, of course, but obviously, as where the planning commission's well aware, the airport had some objections to some of the substantive provisions of the zoning ordinance amendments that were related to the AC district. They have some objections to the master plan amendments that were adopted prior to the zoning amendments and the interplay between the master plan as well as the zoning ordinance. So that's kind of largely that it's not really, it's mostly substantive disagreements with those rather than any sort of procedural issues. But I'm certainly we can circulate a copy of the complaint to any members of the planning commission that are interested.
I
It's
would
very
like to see it.
lengthy.
Could we get a copy of the complaint and the answer? Is that something?
Yes.
You could send us?
I'm doing it right.
I would
now.
appreciate that. We would all
I don't have
appreciate
the
it.
answer yet, but I'll work with Leslie to get that. I'll get you the complaint.
And is
Yes,
this
we just
on-
filed it on Thursday, so we'll get, I'm sure a copy was provided to the board or board representatives, but we'll make sure you have a copy too, Andrea.
Thank
Member
you.
Bruno?
And is this on the township's website? Like this is, obviously, if someone could file a Freedom of Information Act, but we
Well,
just,
it'd be on the, wherever they file.
Yeah,
What court did they
court.
file in,
Right.
Leslie?
It's Kent County Circuit Court.
But being, you could go to the circuit court and pull it.
Yes.
It's a lot easier with
yes.
a case number, but yeah.
exactly. Are we making our citizens hunt for it? Or is there any reason why we wouldn't just make it convenient? for
I thought
citizens?
that Grace released something about it. Maybe I'm wrong. Didn't
I
she,
haven't seen
Timmy?
anything.
That's
thought
actually,
you-
we're looking for a PR firm. I don't know if that's true.
Any other business?
Yes.
Yes, Member Nordic.
I would like to thank Maddie Dodge for her service and wish her luck at where she's going next or whatever she's doing next. And thank you so much. You've been an absolute asset.
Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna miss you.
The late
She's like-
nights.
Come back as a
Yeah.
general Cascade citizen periodically, would you? Scott?
I'm worried. Okay, I'll make this as brief as I can. So in doing some research for tonight's meeting, I was reading some minutes from February of 2023, where it says, motion was made by member Cornsage to recommend option 2 to the board with understanding that it will need to come back to the planning commission and the subcommittee for changes to AC zoning, including overlay B as written, and stormwater ordinance changes be made. And then it goes on to, supported by me, several people voted for it. It was actually opposed by a couple people too. But anyway, this particular motion happened in discussion with amending that area that we were talking about earlier, and on the east side of the airport and to the airport. And there was a caveat that we were going to discuss stormwater changes to that area, which was a key part of the discussion with that whole airport as a
Yeah.
whole related to PFAS and other things. We never really circled back around on the stormwater side of things. And so since we're been talking periodically in these meetings about things that we need to go back and clean up, this kind of jumped out at me as maybe one of those things that we should consider visiting. So I just thought I would throw that out there.
So that's something that we would work with our engineer on. So I would sit down with Eric and review that and see if there's modifications
We-
to our stormwater ordinance.
We would like to be somewhat involved because I think that was kind of the intent there when we started talking about the AC subcommittee and all that with that area. Stormwater was actually mentioned as part of the reason for forming the subcommittee. And then when we got into it, it was determined that that's not really part of that ordinance. That's part of a different ordinance. And so that's a whole different discussion, as you said, with the engineer obviously included, which that motion mentions specifically. So just like to be somewhat involved with that process.
Is that something where Eric would come and present to us at a future meeting?
Yeah, so what we would do, let me just, actually, that brings up what I want to talk to you guys about. So we are now, the master plan's gonna come back on May 20th as well, for public comments. We've received some comments from Ada Township. We've received, and I talked to Brian Hillbrand recently. They're preparing some comments. We've received one comment from a neighbor. Besides that, I haven't received any other public comment, or from a resident, I should say, not a neighbor. But I will compile all of that and bring it to you on the 20th. Danielle and I have started going through the zoning ordinance, and we just went through the table of contents to try to reorganize things, figure out what we want to keep and what needs to go away. We're planning on bringing that to you on June 3, will be the draft table of contents to just kind of say where we're going to go. And I'm planning on bringing some zoning tables. So it will essentially, we're taking some of the long chapters that you go scanning through hundreds of pages, and there's, you know, this page is intentionally left empty and you try to look for things and it's kind of difficult. We're going to bring that into some zoning tables. So that's where we'll start. We're also looking at the village design chapter, which is going to be essentially the form-based code for the village. So we're pulling that out. Danielle's working on that, working on the form-based code there. And then we're kind of redoing the entire, you know, we have, it's just not, I'm not going to get too wonky on you. It's not cohesive. Our ordinance is not cohesive to tell you what you can do where. So we're going to clean that up. And what we would do then is within that airport overlay, we would add language in there. I would talk to Eric about what would be part of the stormwater, what's part of the zoning ordinance. When we get to that chapter, that's when we bring him in. So yes, Eric will come in here. I'll do the same with Melanie, our parks director, when we start looking at landscaping. We're working closely with her. Actually, we have, you know, Eric and Melanie and I have kind of just sat down and said, you know, what are you guys doing everywhere so that there's a little bit more cohesive, less siloing. So we'll bring, you know, obviously the same way that we bring Leslie in for legal matters, we'll bring our other team members in when we're addressing applicable sections of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So will there
Member
be
Bruno?
like a change table? Like, is it kind of more of a formatting, or are we, if we're throwing out like current standards or current items, will those be addressed? This is being removed, this is being substituted, or this
Yeah.
is, okay.
Yes, yes. I think some of it will be formatting.
Okay.
Some of it, so what you'll see first is pretty much the table of contents with a lot of different things that we've talked about or that I've internally found or talked about with Madison or whoever. The table of contents will include everything that we have in our zoning ordinance right now. If we're getting rid of it, it'll be a strike through. If there's things that we need to add, like crime prevention through environmental design, we'll go in this section, and we'll bring everything so that you guys can see kind of the high level of where we're trying to go. And you can say, oh no, you know, like Roundhill happened and we forgot about this, or when we were doing the airport, we said we were going to do this. And then at that time, we'll pull in your feedback and any institutional knowledge that I'm missing. And we'll keep doing this feedback pretty much every meeting.
Good.
We'll throw a section of the ordinance as long as we're progressing well, as long as we don't get like bombarded with
Member
applications.
Reese?
As long as we're included in the process, and we have a chance to make a change or an edit to
Mhm.
it.
Well,
Yeah.
I remember,
I'm
you have,
comfortable.
you have a punch list, right? You have a bunch of wants, maybe needs.
Well, it
for
just seems like
changes.
there's all sorts of things that, you know, come through, like the Wormies thing. We still haven't corrected that. You know,
My question
I
is,
mean, it's-
have you sent her list? Like, are we supposed to be sending you if we know there's? a
Yeah.
I
round?
know at
just
one
do
time, I'm
that.
not trying to put Madison on the spot, but I know at one time, I think you were keeping track of a list
I have a.
with,
Yeah.
with Brian.
Yeah.
That was a fairly lengthy list. And as long as you're sharing that with Andrea, we should be good. I just,
Yeah.
I
you share
can't
that list
remember
with
all
us
of
so we
these
can add to it?
things.
Like,
So
maybe you've already got, like, is that easy to do or not really?
Is what easy to do?
If you have a punch list, could you just email it to us and we can see if our item's already on there or
Mhm.
add to it, or?
Yeah,
I don't see why not.
yep.
Member Reese?
one other process thing I wanted to bring up and an example of why it's important. When we have a case in front of us like tonight with Old 28th Street, it's really helpful if we can include the minutes of the prior approval in the in the packet, just the excerpt of that, because in reading the minutes, and I meant to bring this up and apparently I didn't, but when we made the approval last time, the motion by member Rappin, supported by, I guess supported by me again, included a 42-inch railing on top of the 7-foot retaining wall. And I think that one skated through here today without that. So maybe they're still gonna build the railing, but we've overlooked railings before and probably more dangerous situations than 7 feet, but we need to try and curtail. And again, that's a spot where the minutes being in the packet would have thrown up that red flag and we wouldn't have missed that. So.
Good point.
I'm handling the retaining wall and the fact that we allow these. We technically shouldn't allow a retaining wall higher than 8 feet because we handle it like fences, but that's one thing. I don't want to just impose my preferences, but I think that breaking up retaining walls will actually help with with water issues, and that if we say, maybe 4 or 5 feet is the tallest retaining wall, and then you have to do some step backs or
So
something.
why wasn't that part of today's recommendation then?
I didn't actually know there was a retaining wall in that project.
Maybe they took it out, but with the previous approval, there was a 7-foot retaining wall in the previous one.
Little ancient history here, Round Hill has 16-foot high retaining walls
Oh, yeah.
with
I know.
no guardrail. at all.
But
May
that's
I
because
ask,
we,
just for my
that is
own-
because we follow the Michigan Building Code,
Yeah, I
which
was
does
just gonna
not
say.
require the retaining wall
But our
unless,
zoning
or
ordinance,
does not require the guardrail. Thank you.
Also no cones.
No
So-
cones.
So my question is though, that Mr. Kuiper seemed like a pretty reasonable guy. Can we point it out to him that we can't
Yeah.
hold him to it? It's already approved, but we caught this error. Would he be amenable just to
Sure.
have that? I'm guessing he wouldn't push back.
sure,
I'd push
we'll bring
back.
it up.
You would?
Heck yeah, it was approved.
Public
It's also
safety.
covered in trees.
Well, he could say no, but I think he's.
I don't think he will.
I'm just gonna get deer inside your building.
He
Yeah.
lives in
I
Cascade.
don't know if the retaining wall's on, is it on?
He's a
their
lawyer.
property?
I'm sure you understand the liability.
I'll look into it.
Well, it's not gonna be on township property.
I mean,
No,
we don't
the-
understand the
the
liability.
Irish
There's
roofing
no cones.
building.
We don't put cones on the other side of the library, so why would we need a retain or a railing on that side?
So why did, do you guys remember that process? How did we end up
Why there's no
Ap-
cones? I remember. it.
approving? No, why did we approve a 16-foot retaining wall?
Why didn't the manager allow us to put cones and caution tape in front of it on the library property so people who are on these are all great questions.
Okay, so
I think.
We
we're
have-
moving
there's-
forward.
there's- in the-
nothing
In the
enforceable.
last meeting, we discussed a packet of a recommended implementation of process changes. And that was to address things like that.
The last meeting of,
When we sat in the square over here,
yes.
yes, we
Okay.
talked about the Round Hill recommendation
Yeah,
implementation that's what's it related to.
okay. I'm sending the complaint right now. I did want to discuss a couple other things real quick.
Sure.
Let me pull this up.
Real quick.
Nothing's fast
real,
anymore.
it is.
Better than
Those days-
1140.
Sorry, I
Those
just
days
want to, I
stop.
want to give you guys a heads up on what's happening next meeting. So you're gonna see a packet probably by Friday at the latest for the May 20th meeting. I'm gonna be in Ireland, looking at all the
Ooh,
the lack of
I've been there.
private streets. And yeah, so I'll be gone. We're gonna get the packet out to you earlier. We have 4 things on the next agenda. 2 of them are those, the Thornapple Drive or the other excavating company. The other one is the applicant for the car lot on 28th Street for Fox Motors did finally at least submit a basic plan. What they're proposing to do is take PUD 33, which is currently two buildings that are running perpendicular,
Yes.
Perpendicular
Parallel.
to 28th Street. Those two old
Perpendicular, yeah.
buildings.
Parallel to each other.
parallel to each other, perpendicular
Perpendicular
to 28th Street. And then there's one here. They want to tear them all down and turn them into an extension of the car lot. So that would be an extension of PUD 67.
Do we have to allow that?
Nope, this is a basic site plan.
I mean, can we tell them like, hey, Don't waste your time.
That's exactly what I assumed that you would probably want to do. So because we didn't have it on the agenda, this was kind of, we were gonna do a
Maybe they're
5-minute
listening
pitch.
And they can save us time.
Yep,
That's all.
yeah, so I'll send you the packet. All
Yeah.
that we're asking. What?
Because it's a pending case. Because we're all here. It's weird.
Yeah, we're not deliberating. I'm making comments, but it doesn't mean we're deliberating. Is that what you're asking? Sorry, I'm going off track. Sorry, Andrea.
You'll have the staff report. You can,
Keep
yes,
going.
read the staff report. It will be on the agenda. I don't anticipate that it will take you a lot of time to make decisions, but you read the agenda. We'll talk about the ordinance, the sections of the ordinance that explain why we would approve a PUD. I'd also suggest that if you haven't watched that quick little 25-minute meeting, training on PUDs, it's helpful. I would suggest, I had emailed it to you before our last meeting. It would be helpful for this. Those two things will be on the agenda. What else is on the agenda? Simple stuff, yeah. Oh, yes, a fence and then accessory building. An expansion of an existing accessory building at 2020 Devonwood, which is a DeVos property. So you'll get a staff review for all of that to review in plenty of time, and I'll see you guys again on the
Then
20th.
8:32.
Doesn't get any better than expanding an already large accessory building.
That's
Right.
in Ryan's wheelhouse.
Right.
We have reached utopia.
This is the 10,000 square foot building.
I have one question and I wasn't sure I don't know your humor yet. You're gonna be in Ireland observing the lack of private roads. Is that something on our roadmap?
On our roadmap?
That's not actually what she's going to do.
I know, but I'm gonna run with it since you brought it up.
You want me to take a picture? You want me to?
No, he doesn't like private roads.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't even say that. I would say
Oh,
someone with
is that on
subject
our
matter
roadmap?
expertise that I tapped on the shoulder at the convention that you and I attended in Traverse City. What, his name's Phil McKenna, Mr. McKenna?
Yeah.
Basically said the number one thing you can do to preserve your community is to not allow any more private streets.
Yeah, so
In the Farmland Preservation Committee, we actually discussed Ireland. It was discussed
I had
there
just been there.
for that reason, yeah.
yes.
I
Yeah.
think we all.
So anyway, so it's a legitimate question.
Yes.
So are you just pulling my leg or are you serious? that
No,
it's
I was
something-
serious.
Okay.
That's, yes. So we will be discussing that. There's a couple ordinances right now that we're looking at just rescinding and that were from 2002 related to private roads.
Good.
That,
Can you
we're
give me, can you give us an update on farmland preservation? What's happening with that?
I have not read through everything. We're gonna start that again in June-ish, but that will probably be one section of the ordinance. So we got a heavy lift. We got a lot going on.
Sounds like it.
I now know everything that happened with the airport because we got an application in and I had to go read all the background. So I'm sure that something will come from farmland, which will then require that I have to go back and read every single document for farmland preservation. But it's on my agenda to start back up in June or July. But again, it's probably gonna be, with the zoning ordinance
Okay.
amendments that we're doing systematically.
Any other
Tim.
old business, any business items? Scott?
One other quick item on that list of things to amend. I've brought this up before and I don't know if there's a consensus for it, but private roads, I believe we allow 22 feet, or do we even let them get smaller than that, like 18?
Width?
Yeah,
It's
I believe it's 22.
I thought it was very interesting tonight.
Oh, I think it is 18.
I think it is.
Yeah.
It's 18 and I thought it was very interesting tonight that our applicant has a parking lot entrance that's 24 feet wide. So that's 6 feet wider than we allow a private drive for a neighborhood with 20 houses.
I don't think that's the maximum width. It's 18 feet. I think it has to be a minimum of 18
That,
feet.
right, but we have neighborhoods in the township with 20 houses on an 18-foot road.
Oh, I see.
And this guy's got an office building and he's gonna have 24 foot. It's very out of skew.
With very few cars coming in there.
Well, I just, our private roads are, I know you want to get rid of them altogether. And,
Oh, no, that's
and
not
I,
true. My
well,
grandfather, those that exist, no new ones.
okay,
I live on one side.
but I guess my thought is that if they're being reconstructed or if they're being built, they should be built to a wider standard.
County standard.
Well,
Sure.
yeah,
The Walmart
Maybe.
standard, right, Ryan?
That's Rob's.
drives me crazy. That one really does bother.
I make a motion to
Like where
adjourn.
it ends or where? it
Can I have a
starts?
motion to adjourn?
Entire thing.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by member Reese, supported by member Nordike. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0.